To order with roll call, please.
Lane.
Here.
McDaniel.
Here.
Murdoch.
Here.
Ritter.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Thank you, council. Everyone's present.
Okay. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item is the consent agenda, which is to approve the minutes of the council meeting of June 15th, approve pay ordinance, approve ordinance 2420 adopting 2017 standard traffic ordinance, approve ordinance 2421 adopting the 2017 uniform public offense code, authorize the mayor to sign a lease with the fire district, and approve payroll services agreement with ADP. Any discussion or anything anybody wants to talk about on the consent agenda, or a motion to approve?
There's no discussion. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
McDaniel.
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Murdoch. Walker.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
Our next item is call to public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business that's not listed on tonight's agenda. The comments that are discussed under call to public may or may not be acted upon by the council during this meeting. There's a 4-minute time limit. Please stand and wait to be recognized. Larry?
My name's Larry Inman, 32435 West 91st Street. Some time ago, about 7 or 8 years ago, when they put that new addition of houses behind them, they put in a street with curbs, and they put in 2 storm sewers. Both of those storm sewers dump onto my property. And this is what it looks like. When we get a rain, it more than doubled the volume of water coming down that ditch, and it goes right onto my property and cuts into the yard, making a ditch that I can't keep repaired. I've tried different plants and everything else, but can't seem to get it solved. Is there anything that the city can do to help resolve this problem?
Well,
Can
yeah, I mean, I don't have any wisdom really. And I've talked with Larry, and you've been here on several occasions before about this issue. And really each time, I've been out there when it's raining pretty hard, and I can't say that this is double the amount that it used to be or not. I assume it's more water. I mean, it stands to reason that it would be more. But what I see there is not a ditch that is something that we would typically go out and target for, identify as a problem and target that needs fixed. This is an open channel drainage situation like we have throughout your neighborhood and others that's not enclosed, and there will be some maintenance there that has to be done by the homeowner in terms of mowing, steep slope, that wouldn't otherwise be if we had an enclosed system throughout the neighborhood. So on our priority list, this wasn't something that we would go out and identify as, oh, this is a problem. We don't see a lot of erosion occurring. We don't see the depth of the ditch changing much. I think if the bottom of this, there's a rock layer there that seems like it's stopping it from eroding further. There's a portion, I think on the picture you can see where the ditch kind of moves away from the roadway a little bit. And I don't know whether that's still in the right of way or not, but wherever that is, I don't think that's changed much. Now the volume of water may have changed, but I don't think the path of the water has changed. And so just each time we look at it, it's hard for me to justify spending public funds here where there's other more immediate needs that we can identify. I guess what I could offer is if you'd be willing to participate monetarily in some sort of an enclosed tube or some solution there, maybe we could work something out. But I think just in terms of prioritization, use of public funds, this isn't really, and we do continue to keep an eye on it because there's more.
You don't feel that I'm being discriminated against because I'm the only one in the whole neighborhood that has 2 storm sewers dumping down that ditch and onto my property? As you can see, my property is different than most of them around there. Most of the ditches run parallel with the property, but mine does not. It's below the road, so that the water has to run out into my yard. It can't.
Yeah, so the road is elevated. As you go toward the east down the hill, the road is elevated above
Right.
your yard.
Right.
That's not uncommon. That happens in other areas. Water runoff from other properties traverses in front of lots throughout the neighborhood. You're a little unique in that there is an enclosed system per se. Now it's a system. There's only there's a couple of inlets that drain into a pipe, the outlet here right in front, just on the downstream side of the driveway. But beyond that, this ditch scenario and the flow of water through it, I don't know if that's actually in the right of way or not. It looks like it could be outside the right of way where it flows, where you're talking about. Where the
Yeah,
ditch
it goes into my property, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, it looks like it probably does. But that's not uncommon.
Well, the uncommon part is that I'm trying to maintain that yard there, and I got a letter from the city some time ago that I had to maintain that yard up to the edge of the road.
Yeah, the
And
moment.
it keeps cutting a ditch down through there where I have to mow around it or in it. Since I'm the only neighbor there, in that neighborhood, I should say, that has those 2 storm sewers dumping onto my property, you don't feel like that's an unusual situation?
It's not. It really isn't. It really. It's pretty common.
Not in my neighborhood.
Well, okay.
And there's nobody else in the neighborhood that I know of where the water is actually running through their yard. The ditches are in most of the yards that I've seen, or areas that I've seen, they parallel the yard in some way.
Yeah, I think in most you're right. They're constructed to go essentially follow the edge of the road, basically the dip section.
Did the city pay for the reconstruction and the curbing down the street from me?
Yeah, see, so that was a good example, probably to contrast with this situation. In that situation, this is a quarter-mile east of where you are. Very steep hill. Water was running off of the street and onto the edge of the road, and really causing pretty significant erosion problems and undercutting of the road and also of the adjacent property. And we tried several solutions, grading and turf mats and sort of all throughout the years to try and solve that. Finally, we wound up putting some curb in at that location. So that's a good example of a situation sort of like this, where there was a problem, an erosion problem, that needed attention and rose to the level of triggering public funds to be spent to solve the issue. Here, we've never done any maintenance here at all. And so aside from the fact that the water starts along the road, looks like it does go out of the right of way across Mr. Inman's property, that issue aside, I believe that issue's been occurring since the subdivision was built.
Yes,
that
but
issue-
not at the volume that it is now.
Okay, not at the volume, probably. But we continue to keep an eye on this, and we're just not we don't see the erosion, the maintenance problem that would cause us to do a project like you're talking about. So that's a good example of and it's not like, we don't want to ignore you. I mean, I see, yeah, it probably is more water. But I think if we want to talk about some sort of a solution that involves some contribution from you, maybe we could discuss that. I just, up to now, didn't think that this particular thing rose to the level.
Would the city be willing to make some kind of an estimate of how much it would cost to fix it?
Well, sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
Come up with some solution. And we did,
Mike, can you show me on the picture?
Oh, yeah.
Is it possible for you to show me what part of the?
it should be.
It's just east of where the new street goes out, and it goes south.
is right here. Mr. Inman's house is here, and that new Oak Country 8 subdivision's down this way. So when Scott Drive came through, there's a high point in Scott Drive somewhere back in here. And there's these two inlets take on water that falls in the street, and probably a little bit that falls off of this house, and pipe it under. I think there's a junction box somewhere in here, and the tube extends just east past Mr. Inman's driveway to about right here where my cursor is, and then that's the pipe. That's where it opens. And so for a time, the ditch travels more or less along the edge of the road, and then that's where you see the picture. Somewhere about halfway down, it fans out. But really, I mean, the only reason it fans out is because the road is elevated above the lot, so that you could get over the creek down here. And that happens on the other side of the road, I would imagine. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I haven't looked at the property lines and
No,
stuff.
it doesn't. It's flat on the other side of the road.
Okay.
And there's not just one, there's two of those storm sewers there on the corner. And they're joined together.
Yeah, the two inlets. You mean
Right.
two inlets?
Two
Yeah.
inlets, yeah.
Yeah, so the pipe that comes from this one across the road to that one, and then to a junction box and then down. So that's where.
Where does the natural flow go right there where it ends? Where's the natural flow right there?
Is there a
Well, I
creek
think
there?
it's on the, you can almost see on the picture, it just
The
kind of
tree
heads
line
down
is
toward the
there.
tree line, and the creek's right below. Right.
You know, there's a creek right there at the bottom of right about where that curve is.
So what are you saying, we need to put a ditch in there to control the water?
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but the only solution would be to put in a pipe that would have to run underground down to past my property. That's about the only way you can do it. You can't put a ditch in because the road is elevated about, maybe 3 or 4 feet above my property. 3 feet at least.
Mike, is that a driveway going to another residence further down right there?
Here? Yeah.
Okay.
Driveway there, and another one.
Okay, so that water, when it comes out, the other side of there just flows that way. So it doesn't really, if it wanted to get to the creek, it'd have to go over that driveway to get to the creek. Right?
No, the creek's
No,
before.
the creek's before the
Oh,
driveway.
creek's before this driveway to this
Yeah.
house?
Right.
Oh, so that over there isn't the creek?
No, I think the
No,
creek
that's
right
to the-
there.
Right about there.
That's
Oh,
right.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
somewhere.
culvert under the road. right
Oh,
there.
okay, I'm sorry. Okay, thank
All
you.
right. Well,
I just say I don't think it's something we're gonna be able to solve tonight for sure, but I understand what Mike's saying, that, I mean, just looking at it, the physical boundary or the amount of area that was contributing to the flow in that spot doesn't look like it could have changed. Now, the paving, made a little bit more runoff in that. But just the presence of the two inlets really doesn't change the amount of runoff. It's just collecting it and then discharging it. And that same water, what should have been going to that same location under your.
Well, it wouldn't have gone to that location without that street and those two storm sewers. When they put the street in, they hooked the storm sewers to run right down in front of my house, when they could have diverted it across the street or some other way,
Yeah, but that would have changed the natural. I mean, the natural pattern is from the west to the
Well,
east. It was going across your property. I guess my point is, the water that's fallen there was going across your property in some fashion before. Now,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, but not the volume it is now. It's at least double. All right, thank you.
Anyone else under call to public? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Old business, we don't have any. New business. 4A, consider resolution 982 permitting use of bow and arrow hunting of deer at 31850 West 89th Street.
Yes, Council. As you know, in the uniform fence code that we adopt each year, that the league puts out. Within that booklet, it indicates that using a bow and arrow outside the confines of a building is unlawful. So many years ago, the council decided to amend our code to make an exception for either target practice or use of a bow and arrow for hunting of deer. Now, the regulations on that are fairly stringent on what properties can apply for a permit. The two properties that are on your agenda tonight, they have, these two property owners have applied in years past and have been granted the application has been approved. So essentially the way it works is once the owner makes application for this permission, then the resolution that you're adopting this evening has to be on the person of whoever's out there hunting. So the landowner can allow others to hunt or target practice so long as that person has a copy of this resolution and agrees to comply with all the requirements in the resolution. Part of the process also is that the property owner making application has to send letters to any property that adjoins the property that is the subject of the application, just simply letting them know that this application will be taken up by the council tonight. And the applicants did that, and that's why it's on your regular agenda. If there are any neighbors that had issue with the application, that would give them an opportunity to address you about it. So otherwise, I'd recommend you adopt the resolution as written.
Questions from council?
I'll make a motion, we adopt resolution 982, permitting use of bow and arrow hunting of deer at 31850 West 89th Street.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Murdock and a second by Councilman Ritter. Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
McDaniel,
No.
Murdock,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion carried.
I'd also like to make a motion, we adopt resolution 983, permitting use of bow and arrow hunting of deer on 20 acres located at 89th Street.
Second. Okay, motion and second. Roll call, please.
Okay. Walker,
Yes.
McDaniel,
No.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdock.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
Item 4C, consider final plat for Merck Main Campus.
Good evening, council. What you have before you is the final plat for the Merck Main campus. Mike has been working with the applicants here tonight on the issues surrounding getting them platted and the excise tax, which you all are well aware of. What we have before you is a plat, and it actually, even though it's 160 plus acres, is considered a minor plat under our city code. It is only one tract, so it does fall under the category of a minor plat, so therefore a preliminary plat is not necessary. Put on your chairs before you tonight, I highlighted this area on the drawing here. That was a easement, and through discussions with the applicant, it was decided to go ahead and dedicate that area as right of way to the city. So that has been adjusted. It is also a little bit different from what the planning commission approved, so I did want to point that out to you, that you need to be aware of. The plan itself has not changed, however, the one condition of that right of way grant has been added to the plan. If there's any other questions or comments, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Okay, questions from council? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we accept the dedication of easement in the right of way indicated on the plat. Main campus.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdock,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion carried.
Okay,
All right.
go ahead. The next plat.
Agenda item 4D is basically the exact same thing, except it's for their property to the north. It's also platted as the Merck Farm. Once again, I highlighted this small area that will be dedicated to the city as right-of-way. Basically, all the same conditions apply as to the main campus plat.
Any questions from council? We will make a motion.
Make a motion, we accept the dedication of easements and right-of-way indicated on the plat for the Merck Farm.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Murdock,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion carried.
Thank you, Brad.
All right, moving along. Agenda item 4E, consider temporary use permit for the Soto Family Fun Run. This is an event that's happened several times at DeSoto in association with the DeSoto Days. It will be on September 3rd. The event starts at 7 a.m. ends at 10:30 a.m. approximately. The event is a running event, 5K. It starts at Miller Park, winds its way down to Riverfest and returns. The applicant has submitted the appropriate forms, and I've contacted the email with the applicant on some other items about cleaning up public safety with the sheriff's department. Everything has been worked out. So we are recommending that the council approve the temporary use permit. They're also asking for the $50 total fee to waive.
Okay. Questions from council?
I'll make a motion and that we approve the special use permit for the DeSoto Family 5K and waive the $50 fee.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Murdock.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion carried.
Okay, Brad.
All right. Item 4F. Consider Auto Street sidewalk construction. In February, council approved your capital improvement plan, which included the Auto Street sidewalk project, which extends the sidewalk from 85th Street to Lexington on the west side of Ottawa Street. Currently, there's no sidewalk there at this time. The project is about 480 lineal feet of 5-foot wide sidewalk and ramps. We are going to have to extend the pipe and do a little grading on the ditch at the intersection of Ottawa Street and Lexington. Also want to point out, it did cut this off a little bit, but we are going to have to do on Lexington. We will have crosswalk markings and we're going to redo the handicap ramp on the south side of Lexington Street as well.
Okay.
We did have 6 bids. We advertised and got 6 bids. They were all within a pretty tight envelope, except for one which was extremely high. But I do recommend that you accept the bid for Vintage Green Mark for $31,765. It is within the estimates of our capital improvement plan that we did, staff presented to you in February.
Questions from council?
Yes, the driveways, we're going to cross 3 driveways.
That's correct.
Are we going to do anything for those driveways? or-
Yeah, the driveways will get up to 2 feet past the sidewalk will get paved. So the section from the street to the sidewalk and then 2 additional feet. will
That's
be paved.
included in the bid?
That is included in the bid price, and that will also be 6 inches thick
We
concrete.
need to do something to it.
Right, to maintain the ADA path through there.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? You wanna make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the bid from Vintage Greenmark for the construction of the sidewalk on Ottawa Street in the amount of $31,765.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call?
Walker,
Yes.
McDaniel.
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdock.
Yes.
Thank you, council, the motion carried.
All right, thanks, Brad.
Thank you, council.
Next item, 2018 budget discussion.
Yes, council, we're making a habit of this last item on the
Again.
agenda, talking about the budget. Seems like the last several times we've just been reiterating decisions that we've kind of already made. And so I thought this time it might be the appropriate time to go ahead and produce and distribute the final draft of the budget. So that's the 100-page or so document that you had in your packets. I think, Laura, I gave you a hard copy, didn't I? In your box, okay, good. This doesn't mean we can't make changes, but if we do, we'll be inserting pages into this document. I think it's pretty much in its final form. I have an introductory letter that I want to include, and then there's a page in here for just a summary spreadsheet. Basically, it's a one-page, here's our entire budget sort of summary, but beyond that, hopefully it's in very near its final stage. Since we talked about this last time, we do have a couple of things I want to go over with you. This would be new information, and I'm just working on the staff report right now. We got the final assessments in from the county appraiser, and I think I reported at the last meeting that those were slightly lower than the numbers he gave us in February. I think they probably had more than the average number of protests because the valuations increased so much. In essence, we thought we were going to have somewhere around a 10.5% valuation increase. Turns out that was only about 8.5% or 8.75%. So we had been talking about mill levy reductions in the neighborhood of 3 mills initially, but then we decided not to reduce the mill for debt service. So at that point, we were talking about a reduction of somewhere around 1.8 mills, and with the new valuations, looks like the final version, if everything goes just like it's in here now, we're looking at a decrease of 1.68 mills. That represents about exactly one mill in the general fund and 0.68 mills in the law enforcement fund. The law enforcement contract will be increasing moderately. I think it's around a 3% increase, a little bit less than a 3% increase for next year, which is only inflationary. But the reason we're taking the mill levy down is because the year-ending fund balance in that fund has been increasing quite a bit over the last several years. So we're just knocking that down just a little bit. Law enforcement isn't subject to the property tax lid, so if that fund balance needs to change next year, we don't have that lid restriction on us. The second item I wanted to bring to your attention is related to the refuse contract. Our 5-year contract with Hunting Creek is up at the end of this year, and Patrick and I had an initial meeting with them about that a couple weeks ago, and the writing is on the wall for a pretty significant increase in their rates. I think a justifiable increase. They haven't increased their rates for the last 2 contract cycles, so they haven't had a rate increase in 10 years. Meanwhile, their costs have been increasing inflationarily like everybody else's costs. They haven't given us a final proposal on their rates, which we know we'll be negotiating throughout the last second half of this year. But judging from what they indicated and what the rates they're charging in other communities that they operate in, it looks like about a 25% increase. So what I've done with the refuse part of the budget is I've just increased the expected revenues by 25%, increased expected expenses by 25%, and left it there. So we'll be talking about that about the refuse contract specifically. I think from the city hall perspective, we are more than happy, just pleased as punch with the service we've gotten from Honey Creek. Couldn't ask for any better hauler. But the issue does come up, well, if the contract's up, you want to go out for bids, and that process is an involved process, sometimes a painful one, and I think something we need to decide if we want to do or not. So that's a decision for another day, but the budget you'll see does have an increase for those services. The third item is a $750,000 contingency within the budget in the general fund under the administration department. There is under capital outlay a line item called contingency, $750,000, and this is put in there it's really the first time we've done this. It's a budget allocation, so we are authorized to spend it, but we understand that we have no intent to spend any of that money. And what this does is it helps us allocate all of our resources on the state budget forms, so that we're not showing a great big $1 million+ carryover to the next year. The reason that this has become an issue stems partly from the debate around school financing that's happened at the State House in the last couple of years. There's some momentum toward the thought that these school districts are carrying these large fund balances. They can just use some of those for a couple of years, and they don't have to have an increase in money from the state. Municipalities looked at that sort of rhetoric and are very concerned about that. And so most cities do budget, they fully budget all of their resources, and resources mean the revenues they're going to get next year and the balance they have in their funds, so that they have budget authority, but they're not levying taxes. They do know they're going to have year-end rollover. The $750,000 is truly a contingency, and it's for that purpose. And the text, the narration that I've had throughout the budget makes that clear, that we don't intend on spending that. So our expenditures in the general fund have a big bump in them, $750,000 bump, but that's the reason for it. And we're not levying taxes to offset that contingency. The fourth item I want to tell you about is the strategic planning initiatives. When we talked about capital improvements last time, we were talking about capital improvements and strategic planning initiatives sort of in the same context, and I said we probably need to divorce those two. So I've done that now. I pulled out, there's a $139,000 line item, again in the administration budget for strategic planning stuff. And just like the capital improvements that we're going to talk about here in a minute, we've got a list with very specific things and with specific dollar amounts, and they all add up to $130,000. There's nothing in the budget that holds us to this. We can decide to do something else altogether, do more, do less, but that's the number that's in the budget, and this list of items should be familiar to you. This is the one we've kind of been working with. Similarly, on the capital improvements budget, we've got shown just a little over $1 million in that budget now. This is, what I want to do is put this number in for budgetary purposes, but then continue that discussion this fall with a more specific and in-depth, what are the scopes of these projects, what are the timelines, do we really, is this really what we want to do? Nothing here, if you approve this budget tonight, nothing in it holds you to any of these projects. The sixth item has to do with a fund called Capital Projects Fund, not to be confused with the Capital Improvements Fund. Capital Projects is a separate fund in our budgeting accounting software, and all it's ever done is take an excise tax and doled it out. So it takes excise tax, whatever we get in a year, and most years that's somewhere around 20 or 30, or has been 20 or 30,000. I think that's going to increase. Saw a big bump last year with the Merckplex, $100,000. It takes that money, puts $35,000 into the debt service, and the rest goes into the capital improvement fund. I don't see any reason to have the fund if that's all it does. So in the budget,
I didn't hear that.
I don't see any reason to have this fund if all it does is take in excise tax money and spend it and dole it out to the other funds. It's basically just an extra step that I don't see we have a need to do. So in the 2018 budget, we start the year with the fund, but we're gonna zero that fund out by the end of the year. So there's a $127,000 transfer from the fund into the capital improvements, and that'll zero that fund out by the end of the year. We'll probably do it January 1st, actually. So at the end of 2018, that fund will no longer exist. The item 7 on page 3 of the staff report talks about the electric utility fund. Again, we've talked about this. If you look at the fund worksheets, you'll see a couple of new line items in there. We talked about using the electric utility fund to essentially finance our vehicle replacement program. And so rolling stock, stuff like pickup trucks and dump trucks, we'll buy them with cash from the fund, and then we'll be paying that fund back over time. So you'll see a revenue line item called lease purchase transfers. These are transfers from the street department and water department and sewer and whoever else that's paying back these allocations. And then you'll see an expense line item called trucks and equipment purchase. You'll see those in that electric reserve fund. 2018, the expense is going to be $170,000 for a purchase of a 5-yard dump truck. That's number one on the list, so that's what's in the budget for next year. Also in the electric reserve, you'll see the first of two $225,000 transfers from the water fund. This essentially, these transfers used to go into debt service. We're not putting them into debt service anymore. We're going to put them into the electric reserve. Basically what this does is it allows the debt service balance to pay off the electric reserve for the Commerce debt project that we did a couple years ago. So we've been through that a couple times. That you'll see in the electric reserve. The last thing I want to bring to your attention is debt service and the CIP projections. Now, this doesn't hit the 2018 budget at all, but it would conceivably hit the 2019 and 20 budgets. And if you're interested, you can see it in those 5-year projection spreadsheets. But the capital improvement plan that we're going to be going through in the fall contemplates additional bond money to fund some of these initiatives, some of the projects we have. We're looking at $1 million in 2019 and $1.5 million in 2020. We're also going to be in the debt service fund refinancing a couple of bonds, and this year we're actually going to refinance those because those will save us more than $300,000 over their life. You'll see that actually in the budget spreadsheets as well. But I just want to bring it to your attention because it kind of rolls into the CIP that we're kind of just starting that discussion. The projection sheets do show that. So that's kind of the highlights of what's new in here. In terms of the schedule, we've had our schedule that we've had the public hearing for the budget adoption on August 17th. That would be the night that we actually would have to approve the budget and get it to the county. So in advance of that, we would have to notice for the public meeting on that sometime around the 1st of August. If we're comfortable enough with what we've got right here, and we don't see any need for changes, we could publish the notice for public hearing for the first meeting in August, so August 3rd, and that would give some time, if we had any snafus at the public hearing, give us another couple of weeks to actually certify the budget that we're going to do. In the event that we're comfortable enough with this, why don't you take that, Danny, take one for yourself. This spreadsheet here is, if you've done this enough, this will look familiar to you. If not, it won't. But this is the notice of the budget hearing. This is what we have to to submit to the paper, that would appear in the paper, that let everybody know. Basically what this does is it sets our maximum amounts for the tax we're gonna levy, for the general fund, debt service, and law enforcement, and it sets the maximum amounts that we can spend next year in those three funds plus our unbudgeted funds, which are down. So if you look at the last three columns really on this spreadsheet, those are all the maximum amounts that we could levy and that we could actually spend. This spreadsheet represents what's in this big budget book that you just got. We just did this afternoon. We don't need any formal answers on this just yet, but if you're comfortable enough and you want this, if you're comfortable moving forward, if you want to just authorize me to go ahead and publish this for the August 3rd meeting, I think we could move this along and have that budget hearing just a couple weeks before. So, for what that's worth. In the bottom right corner on there, it says reserves there, $328.50. I talked about the $750,000 that we're showing. That still leaves, even, if you take that money out of our fund balance, that still leaves, by the end of the year, $320,850 in the general fund. And so, on the state budget form, there is a place this year for cash balance reserve forward. We are going to show that $320,000 in that line item. So when you see the state budget forms, you'll see that number reflected on the state budget form. So as far as the state's concerned, that's what we have in our reserves. Everybody knows that we're not going to either spend that $750,000, so we're going to wind up with a little more than $1 million projected at the end of 2015. Okay, so I'll stop.
Questions? Lori?
I don't think I have any questions or concerns about the budget right now. I mean,
Danny?
No.
Ron?
I'm through looking at it.
Yeah, I think we've hashed you out pretty good here.
Yeah, it seems like the early start really helped.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think you explained things a little bit really well, and your narrative kind of helped out
Right.
as far as where we were going. So,
Yeah.
I think as we've gone along, we've kind of made some decisions that you've stuck in there. So it's made it a little easier this way. So.
Yeah, I hope that the narratives in here we can use year after year, because up to now, I mean, thank God for Bonnie. Bonnie has this uncanny memory for, oh, we use that for this and that and the other thing, and a bill will come in, what do we code this to? Oh, that's the, she just has that institutional knowledge. Without it, I wouldn't know. I mean, just with the budget document we had for this year and the previous ones, there's not a whole lot of that in there. And I don't
These
know.
extra pages where you have the use of the funds, I think those are very helpful.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Really knowing.
Yeah, I have the department heads, by and large, the department heads did that.
Yeah, they did a good job then.
I spent 4th of July compared to last year's budget.
Instead of fireworks, you did this?
Yeah, I never went outside the fireworks at 9 o'clock at night, seeing the smoke.
Well, so we need a motion then to authorize publishing the notice, or?
Yeah, if you're comfortable
If
with
we're
that.
ready to do
Just
that.
notice of budget hearing, yeah.
Okay, I'll make that motion that we authorize the publishing of the budget.
Notice of budget
Notice of
hearing.
the budget hearing
And we'll notice it for August 3rd.
I'll second that.
for
Okay.
August 3rd.
Did you get that, Lana?
I did.
Okay.
Gonna do by ayes or roll call?
We do ayes?
I said, are you,
Oh.
which way are you going to do?
That means
Ayes
you
in
can if you
favor.
want, Rick.
You got a roll call there?
Hold on just one minute.
I will do it by ayes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We ayed it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I followed it, but.
Okay, executive session.
I don't have one.
Okay, good answer. Good answer. Advisory reports, Mike?
I do have one of those.
All right.
Lexington Lake Park will be opening Saturday morning. They're having a ribbon cutting ceremony at 9 a.m. They sent me and Mayor Meunier an email a couple weeks ago asking if any city officials wanted to be involved. whatever level we want to be involved in. Tim is not going to be able to attend that. He's in the hospital, having some tests for shortness of breath. I think he's okay, but not going to be able to be there. So I thought we'd ask if anybody would be free and willing and
I
available.
plan on being there.
You're going to be there?
I plan on.
Okay.
Do you want to speak?
Do you
Well,
want to
you tell me
speak?
what to say. I'm not very good with words, you know. That come
How
out
about
where
we
people won't hear them anyway.
tell them that we'll be there.
Be there and
attendance
acknowledge
to-
us.
And in support of the whole thing, but we're not gonna have a big speech. I plan on being there. I think Jay Garvin is gonna be there as well. So,
Did you see the article in the Johnson County Seniors Magazine? Of course, you guys are seniors.
We don't get
We don't
that.
get that yet, Ron.
I did. Well, it tells all about it.
does it?
And guess how they plan for people to get there?
Right in
What
front of
have
your
I been
house.
Your
bitching-
road.
No, what have I been bitching about? 95th
95th,
Street.
well, that's what they said when we met with them. 95th.
Oddly enough, on a side note, for 95th, the county called up Ron Creason, county, public works, called up Ron Creason, hey, you guys ready for us to come chip seal? And I was like, chip seal what? Well, we're gonna chip seal 95th. We're gonna chip seal 95th all the way through town. I was like, hey, go for it, but, okay, turns out, yeah, they are.
You sure they're not talking about Sunflower Road, because aren't we gonna have to pay $35,000 to do our half?
They're gonna do, yeah, that's still in the works. They're also gonna do Sunflower Road, but from 95th to 103rd, which we've been maintaining for 10 years. Out of the goodness of their heart, I believe. I haven't
Okay, well,
confirmed that.
You know, I've been saying, and I'm gonna keep on saying, a year from now, 95th Street will be nothing but a pothole. Because the traffic's already going out my house in county vehicles.
Yeah. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on. You're right.
It's gonna be great for the people of Soto, Johnson County, and Wyandotte County, and Leavenworth County, and, Overland Park, and Latham. It's gonna be
A lot of
great.
good fish out there.
Oh, I know there is.
So,
On
9 o'clock
site.
is when, and I guess we'll stand there at a certain spot where they can point to us and we'll smile away.
All right.
All right, very good. I will not be here for the next meeting on July 20th. I'll be out of the state. So I'm going to work to get the packet out and then leave town.
Will you make sure the packet link gets posted to the website so that
I will.
our concerned citizens,
I do.
DeSoto, they have
It
access?
actually, it does my heart good when I mess that up.
And they
And
call you
people
on it.
notice, it's
Right.
not for nothing. That's
Right.
good. I don't know how, I didn't get the link posted until this afternoon this evening about
Early.
6:15, yeah. And then lastly, I wanted to mention, on the consent agenda, we had the ADP payroll services agreement. That is, I'm real excited for this. We've really struggled, Atlanta primarily has struggled with our payroll system. If you don't know what it is, it's the old-fashioned cardstock time card punches with the old-fashioned clocks on the wall where you punch and each employee has to keep track of their time card for 2 weeks and then they write and so they calculate their hours and they total them up at the bottom. And then Atlanta has to, department heads have to certify that, and Atlanta has to enter it. Just every step of the way is a opportunity for a mistake. And then Monday mornings are just frantic pants on fire, run around getting all the department heads, get their time cards in, so Atlanta can get all that entered and into the state and upload into our system, and so we can get all. It's really just a source of frustration and angst. We looked at a couple of payroll providers, and they're both very, very similar to what they do, but ADP has just really gave us a great price. It's only going to cost about $300 per pay period, and about $1,600 to set it up initially. And once it's set up, the login occurs through a computer. Each employee will have his own login through the ADP system. He can log in the morning and out in the afternoon. He can see how many hours he's got, what his schedule is for next week. Department heads can schedule their employees, see who's timed in, who's timed out. And all employees can have this on their phone, so they can log in on their phone, and it can be geolocated. So we can't have lifeguards logging in from Shawnee. They have to be at the pool. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to make our lives a lot easier. We'll be able to track vacation time, leave time on that. So we'll be doing that. I think the first payroll in September will be the first one for that. So,
So we have to find another task for Lana to do re-time?
yeah, I've got some ideas.
Lana
If you
still
have any
has to
suggestions.
do some of it, but it won't be, I don't think it'll be, nearly as hard as it is. It isn't hard right now because I've done it for 19 years, but it will certainly, like Mike said, it won't be the pants on fire kind of thing every Monday or every other Monday. And
Yeah.
I schedule, my vacation or any time off around payroll Mondays because Bonnie would shoot me if she had to take that on. It's just, there's just a lot goes into it, and it will be nice to be able to not have to do all of the actual figuring up all the time cards and the leave time. And right now I keep a big 3-ring binder of everyone's leave request forms. And
It's hard for me to believe the auditors haven't looked at our system and said, you guys gotta do something.
If it works, it works.
Works, that's right.
You don't have to break what works, so, and they probably see that as a small,
Yeah.
But we're getting enough people that it's getting a lot harder to manage.
The other good thing about this agreement is that we're only bound to it for 90 days. And they have to earn our business every month. Good deal.
Anything else,
That's
Mike?
all. Nope, that's all.
Patrick?
Only thing I wanted to let council know that, you've probably heard about the new amusement, ride law that went into effect due to the death of the Wedge Slitterbaum. The pool that or the slide that we have at the pool, that does fall within the law, but Justin has already been in touch with the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor is going to be the agency issuing permits, and Justin's already been in touch with them, and so that will become a permitted ride. But outside of that, we don't have anything that qualifies. So if you hear anything about that, that's what that's about. Other than that,
I have a question for you.
sure.
Primrose. Can we talk about that?
Sure.
What's the status?
Oh, you mean the
The tax sale, I think
Right.
is what you're talking about, right?
just
Yeah.
in limbo? The sale is, the county is in charge of that sale, and you remember the sale was supposed to be right around the first of the year, and
And they changed it to July.
yeah, and the county attorney just keeps punting it down the road.
Is it because she's coming up with, well, I've got a deal working? Is that the reason why you think?
No, not at all.
Well, I had a little bird tell me that that's what she's working on, but I don't know if that's true or not. Hopefully she's listening, and she'll call me on the phone after a while, but something needs to happen there.
Yeah. The only message that I've ever gotten from her has to do with, well, we still need to get one more, defendant served, because when they do this, they do, hundreds of properties, and to do one sale, they want to make sure everybody's served, all the paperwork's worked out. So if you have one property that they're, it's an absentee owner, or they can't find them, they may have to go to court to get an order to publish by, newspaper instead of personal service. But I've heard nothing from her, and she's been pretty good about the times that she has, indicated, Joanne's lawyer called and had some questions, but I've got no information from her that it's, they're gonna come in and pay it off. So, one thing just to add to that, if and when we do bid, we are limited to bidding up to the amount of our special assessments. We can't bid above that amount.
We can't.
Right, you can't run it up, but we have a big chunk of money on the special assessment, so that may be plenty enough to, get control of the property.
That's all we want. I mean, as long as they collect enough to cover the special
Is it over
assessment.
600,000 now?
Don't think it's quite at 600.
That was the total
Right.
initially, and she has made a couple of payments.
Yeah.
So it's not quite that.
Yeah, there's a little piece that she actually paid off, but the taxes on it was just a few $100. that she came in and paid that one off, so that one dropped out of the sale, but.
Was that farm ground?
I believe so, it's one that doesn't have any lots.
Yeah.
There's a property next to me, there's 32 acres right there, and I think that's all.
I don't think, no, it wasn't that big.
Yeah, I don't think it was that big. But other than that, she wasn't.
Anything else, Patrick?
That's it.
Mike or Patrick, do we want to mention the El Patron waiver that's coming up?
No, we didn't wanna mention that, Brad.
Okay. Nobody said anything about it.
No, you wanna go ahead?
Well, I just wanted to, the next meeting, I guess it's kind of unique, but because the restaurant is within 200 feet of the property line of the high school, that we're gonna have to have a public hearing for, and ask council to waive the requirement that we have that can't have alcohol sales within 200 feet of a school, hospital, or a church, and that's city code, so.
Okay.
It's about 185 feet from the property line to the corner of the building, but it's less than.
Yeah. And this isn't, yeah, they're still trying to open in August sometime. This hasn't held them up at all. Doing some improvements inside the building.
Okay. Lana?
Just to say that the 4th of July at Riverfest went off with only a few raindrops, and we actually had 18 vendors and had a decent turnout, not as large as last year, but I think the rain and possibly it being on a Tuesday with people having to go to work Wednesday morning, so it kind of slowed it down. But I stood at the gate as people were leaving, and everyone seemed to be in good spirits and received a lot of good compliments. So thanks to the city for another great show.
Okay. Kevin? Lori?
I don't have anything for tonight.
Danny?
Mike, heard good reports on the people that were complaining about the sand that has not been an issue since that time we talked.
Oh, okay, good.
Out there at Gardner Road and 83rd.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they've been apparently keeping it in good shape, and the people that, commented, they said, hey, it's been looking good, we haven't had any problems since that one time. And, I don't know if somebody lost a little bit of the load that time.
Yeah, hard to say.
It's hard to say, but, ever since then, it hasn't ever been an issue, and I go down there, go by there all the time, so. Anyway, I want to say thank you for that, it's looking good, and I had nothing else.
All right. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Ron? I don't have anything. Somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion, we, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned.
Good night, Dan.
Good night, Danny. See you Sunday if not before.
Yeah.